Hey guys, we're doing a transmission drain and fill on the 2014 Jeep Cherokee today. I think this works on the 14 to 19. This is a 4-cylinder. You have to get the Mopar 8 and 9-speed, 8 and 9-speed ATF, which is $100 for a case of 6 of them. That's what everything I've seen online says you have to do. I don't feel like putting something else from your local auto parts store in here. It is $100 for a case of 6. You're not supposed to use all of it. I think with just a drain and fill, you're only supposed to get about 3 to 4 quarts out. So we'll see if that's the case. Like with most things working on a vehicle, you got to jack it up here. So we're going to jack up the driver's side, make sure the parking brake's on, chock the rear wheels, make sure it doesn't move because we are on a little bit of an incline here, or decline. So we're going to take this driver's side wheel off. You're supposed to be able to get to the drain and the fill ports from the driver's side wheel well here. So we'll see if that's the case. The drain, you have to take the skid plate, or I guess the splash guard on the bottom off, which is a range of bolts, 8s and 10s, I believe. And then it's supposed to be fairly accessible. That may be famous last words. We'll see if that's the case. That's what we're going to be doing today. Thanks for watching. All right, driver's side wheels off. I put the wheel underneath as a safety precaution. You don't have to. I leave the jack on with the jack stand. Just again, there's multiple points. I don't want a vehicle falling on me, so that's how I do that. We'll see how this goes. Bolts are 19 millimeter or equivalent SAE if you want to go with American numbers or US numbers. The job is supposed to be pretty easy. Like I said, one thing you do have to get, and there's actually, believe it or not, an instructional video that points out making your own dipstick using a coat hanger. So I had a coat hanger here. You measure from the bend at the top there, on the inside I guess, all the way to the tip. That's supposed to be 140 millimeters. So that's how you're supposed to get accurate measurements. On the fill port, which is back in there. I'll show you once I get this a little bit further along, but actually I guess I can do it right now and see if I can get in there and see it. But you'll see I guess it's, see that crescent shaped piece of aluminum right there? There's a little drain or a fill port right above that. You can see just above the tip of my finger. I believe that's where it is. So that's where you're supposed to get that little dipstick in to measure the level. And we'll talk about that further once I get to that point. But we're going to do the draining portion first. And that's again taking the splash guard off. Combination of 8s and 10 millimeters, which I've had it off multiple times. I did the drain pan on this, which is a pretty straightforward job, believe it or not. It's pretty easy. So we'll see here. All right, skid plate, drip plate, splash guard, whatever you want to call it's off. It is 4 10s along the front. I guess I can show you one here. 4 10s along the front here. I don't know if you can see those. There are 2 on either side, 2 10s on either side, and you should have 3 to 4 8 millimeters on the back there. So make sure you get all of them. There's a new oil pan I did not that long ago. Looks like it's doing its job. Those leaked. I don't know what happened, never touched it. That was leaking really bad. The bolts were loose. I don't know if the gasket, actually OEM did not have a gasket on here, so I added a gasket and put some gasket sealer on there as well while I was at it. So it doesn't look like it's leaking, which is nice. And the skid plate is nice and dry. That thing is all destroyed because it's covered with, or it was covered with oil, but it is no longer. Okay, so the electric socket wrench always helps, so that makes it go a lot faster. 10s and 8s. We are going to get under here with the drain pan and find the drain plug. Let's see if I can see that for you here. Looks like we are, it's right there. You can see that guy right there. Looks like we're seeping a little bit. So something's leaking. So maybe it's time for a top off here. Maybe that'll help. But looks like it's 6 millimeter-ish. And then I was watching a video. Apparently there is a drain or a fill port. I don't know if you can see it here. Let's see. There's a, where are we at? Am I seeing it right? There's a 6mm somewhere over here on the transmission. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of right there. Let's see. Right there. Let's see if it'll focus. It's not going to focus. But you can kind of see it right there, right in the middle. Where we at? Right there. That looks like a fill port. I've seen in other videos people have said that that's the fill port as well, where you don't need the dipstick, which goes right there. You can see the little bolt right there. So we'll see if that's the case. I'll kind of mess with both and see. Good practice is to crack loose the fill ports before you crack loose the drain port, because if you can't get the fill port off in for whatever reason, then you're not in a good position if you got the drain port out and draining already. So good practice is to crack the fill port open first before you do the drain port. So I'm gonna do that now. All right, after further contemplating and going through this job and realizing it's so difficult to get to that measurement port that's, gosh, I don't even know if you can see it in the video, that's up there. You can't even see it, it's not even going to focus on it, but it's up here. They're 8mm, by the way, for all three. So you got one up here, that's the measurement port, and then you got another one, let's see if it'll focus, right here. I don't know if you can see it. You can see it over here. There we go. 8mm there. That's the actual fill port, I believe, because when I measured from the port up there, up here, my finger, up here, there's a measurement port up there. That's where you're supposed to put that 140mm dipstick, and just eyeballing it, it's about to the bottom of that guy. So I think this is the fill port. So you fill this up from here. I've already drained. And that's about how much fluid I got out of that guy. Don't mind the logo. Sorry about that. Let's do that. There we go. Oh, blank side. There we go. Yeah, there we go. No named bucket. That's about how much fluid I got. It's still kind of dripping. Kind of dark on the fluid. I haven't looked at the new fluid yet, but I have to imagine that's pretty dark. So we'll see. I'm just going to fill from here. I'm going to fill that guy up and fill as much as I can. You're supposed to measure while it's running. So you bring it up to temperature and you measure while it's running. So I'm going to do that, but I'm going to fill it up using a syringe that I have. So before you start this job, you're going to need some type of fluid transfer pump, which I have one here that I use for a differential job. I cleaned it out pretty good. It's dried out. So it's a syringe. It's got a tube that comes off of this that you can pump fluid from into. They sell cheaper ones. You can go to your local auto parts store or parts store, and they'll sell cheaper ones. But this is the one I got. It works pretty good. The cheaper ones I have found kind of fall apart in your hands and sometimes one-time use. This one, it's a little bit sturdier build, so I'm going to use that to put the fluid in. Again, I got 6 quarts. We'll see how much it takes. Alright, we are to the filling portion of this, and I had a little makeshift measuring jug here. Don't worry, that's not a T-jug anymore. That was used for previous oil changes, so it's been dirty. I didn't dirty a new one. But we got about 120 ounces out of the drain, and just by quick math, that equals about 3.75 of the 32 ounce little fill plugs. On my little outdoor cat here hanging out with me. So these are 32 ounces each. Right there. So 120 divided by 32, 3.75 of these. So not quite 4 of these is what I got out. Don't know if the level's right, but we're gonna do the method where we fill that side port. Like I said, I think that's gonna be the way to go. I think that's really where you're supposed to do it. So we're gonna put, with my syringe, we're gonna pump, fluid transfer pump, whatever you want to call it. We're gonna pump as much as we can into there, and then we're gonna run it. And apparently there's, I imagine there's a thermostat, or it's gonna run through the gears, or what combination of that you want to use. But that's how we'll get 3.75 back in there. Hopefully that's what we can get back in there. I hope that we don't have to do anything special to do that. But that's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna pump that in there, see how much we can pump in there, and then we'll go from there. All right, progress update. Come to find out, you can only get so much in that fill hole right there before it starts flowing out. I had the car running and I was able to get not quite 2.5 of the bottles in. So was that a quart each? Not quite a quart each. So I got 2.5 in. Still need to get to the 3.75 mark of what we got out. So you have to get to that back one right there. So I don't know if you can see the there it is. You can see the extension I have on there. It's a 6mm. Not sure why. The fill is a 6, the drain is an 8, and this, I guess, inspection port is an 8. So just so you know, 2 8s on the drain and the side inspection port over there, you can see it, and then the fill and the fluid level check port is a 6. Go figure. 6mm there. So what I had to do was get underneath the car, and the only way I could reach it was a number of extensions. So if you don't have a bunch of extensions, either go get them or don't do this job, because you got to get a bunch of extensions. And I fed it down through here behind, again, this is the 2.4 4-cylinder. You can see right here. So I fed it through here. So you got the master cylinder, or the brake fluid fill right here, and then right next to it you'll be able to see down in there. And now that I fed it, you can see down in there, and I just cracked it loose. You're also going to need a swivel. So I did a combination of extensions, and I do have a 3/4 inch or a 3/8 inch swivel extension on there to get to it. So need a number of extensions to get down to it because space is tight. I don't know who's able to get in here with the socket wrench to get to that fill port on the back side there. It's not happening, at least for me. You gotta have pretty small hands. But yeah, so we're making progress, and so we'll get our full 3.75 in there here shortly. I recommend you wear gloves for this job. I got the 4 quarts in there, or 32 ounces, whatever, however you want to do it. Got them in there. That syringe was barely long enough to go through this side right here. I found that if you get underneath, you have a little bit more room on the other side. So if you kind of reach your hand in from the other side, you can kind of get a little more room. That's kind of how I did got the fill port off, as I got underneath the car, and you can kind of reach both arms. So I lied down with my head facing towards the back of the car, and I put my right arm up over one side and my left arm up over through this gap right here, and I can use both hands to get not only the 6mm socket with the Allen head, 6mm Allen head on there, or hex head, or whatever you want to call it. But there's my swivel, so you got to get a swivel on there. And then I put half of the extensions on, and what I did was I fed them up through the bottom, and then I found from the top, I found the end of those extensions, and I added 2 more. You really don't need 2 more, but I added 1 more extension. So probably about I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of a 2 foot of extension. So if you don't have that, that's how I got it done. I don't know how else you're gonna get it done with the engine inside or in the vehicle. That's the way I was able to do it. So just keep that in mind if you're gonna do this, and you want to do it. I mean, you're saving money. Really, my only cost was the fluid. Paid $94, something about that, shipped to the house for the fluid for 6 quarts. I only used 4. So what I'll do now is I'll go back to that tutorial that I found where you're using the dipstick. I'm probably going to shorten this, the handle part, but it's 140 millimeters from the bend to the end of the stick, and that's supposed to be how you measure the fluid level, and there's certain levels on that. I'll probably wrap, I saw somebody talk about adding painter's tape, the way you can see the level on there a little bit better, so I may do that, but do that at your own risk. If you don't want to get tape in there, I don't imagine I will, but I'm probably going to shorten this. So the handle's probably too long to get in there. Maybe not, we'll see. That's what I'm going to do next is I'll start the car, get it up to temperature. I'll follow up. It's getting a little windy, so if you can't hear me, I'll do a voiceover. But what I'll end up doing is check the level. There's a certain temperature you're supposed to check the level at. I'll add that into the video here at some point. That way you can see what that chart looks like. You can do this job hopefully in your own garage and save some money. If you're slightly mechanically inclined, yeah, it's a little messy. Like I said, get some gloves. But really, you know, this is the kind of stuff that you should be able to do on your own. It's not super complicated. Just take your time. If you have a little bit of mechanical know-how and some tools, set up in the dealership. Probably, I'm sure they charge $500 plus for this job, or at least a few $100s for this job. You know, it makes sense. Well, I mean, they probably do, because the fluid's $100, and then they charge you probably 2-3 hours of labor on this. So yeah, this is probably all of $500 to do this job at the dealership. So save yourself some money, do it yourself, follow this, and hopefully this helps a few people. But yeah, I'm gonna check the level, start the car. One thing to note, I don't know if I said this, but if you start the car and I use that fill port that's down here, lower side, I guess that's a check port. When I was filling it up, I got about 2.5 of the bottles in that way. But I had the engine running, so I guess it opened up some coolant lines and a few different things where more fluid was able to get in. But as soon as I turned the engine off and I left that port open, fluid started pouring out. So keep that in mind if you're going to use that port to fill in, because it's a little easier to get the first 2 quarts in that way, to be honest with you. I would do that, and then just make sure you plug it back up if you got the engine running before you turn the engine off, and that way you don't lose extra fluid or new fluid that you shouldn't have. All right, so I ended up getting the 4 quarts in there. You're gonna have to do the extensions to get the fill port on the back side there. Remember, 6mm Allen head, hex head on the top. The drain plug is an 8mm. Still have the drain pan or skid plate, splash plate, whatever you want to call it, to put back on. So I'm happy I got what I took out, I got back in, I believe, and the fluid that came out was pretty dirty. Let me show you real fast. That's what came out of there. So that's pretty dark stuff. The stuff that went in was very clear. So clear, like very like light tan to clear. So this coming out, it's about 114,000 miles on this on the Jeep. So it's well overdue, even though they say it's lifetime. But yeah, so pretty easy job considering, you know, just take your time. Like I said, you got to figure out how to get to that fill port on the backside. You can get there. Like I said, the extensions I used were, you know, not quite, probably just under 18 to 24 inches to get down there. So I fed the first half of extensions there with the swivel and the 6mm. I started with that on the actual fill port down in the back there. Probably can't see it from there, but it's down there. You gotta go through this channel right here to get down to it. And then I attached a second set of extensions, the black part starting there, and that came up to about here in the engine bay. So I was able to tighten it from there. So it's possible. Just know that that's part of it, and you'll have to do that. If it's too much for you, obviously take it to the dealership, and you don't feel like handling that, you can do that. It's just going to cost you more money. This again, like I said, just it's getting windy again, so bear with me. But like I said, basic tools. All I paid for was about $94 worth of fluid. And I was able to put that on there and do the job. So just need basic tools. So I'm going to button it back up, put the flash guard back on. Good thing to have a drain mat, splash mat, whatever you want to work on, to catch the fluid, so that way it's not all over your driveway. That's what I use. It's the old format out of my truck. So it works kind of perfectly. You can kind of snake it around the jack stand and the jack, which actually kind of works out for me. So make it work. But yeah, so we'll put this back together, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and